Alright guys, so welcome to this tutorial, and in this one we are going to see how we can make wet maps using this Vellum soft body simulation. So we'll be also be doing this Vellum soft body simulation, which is like very easy, and we'll see how we can make these kind of wet maps on collision, and also we can have this how we can have this drying effect. So I see there are like a lot of tutorials which already shows you like how you can make wet maps, but the thing is like it's not, they don't really show the complete process. I mean, I'm not blaming anyone, but it's just the information is missing out there. So I thought like why not to make a complete tutorial which can also show you like how you can blend between a wet and a dry material. All right, so okay, so let's start with the scene. So in my scene I have this test geometry squab, and then I have this test geometry this duck and Roberto, and then I took a box basically, and I added some subdivisions. I grouped some of these polygons, and I named a group. I didn't name the group, sorry. And I went to this poly extrude, and I just chose that group, and I extruded it. So I'm having a kind of container kind of thing, and then I just transformed it. Okay, and now we have something like this. Okay, so I'm not going to show you, like, because that's very easy. Let's not waste time and let's just get to the real stuff. Okay. All right. So now we want to do a Vellum simulation. So how we can do that? That's very easy. So let's just add some Vellum constraint first. So Vellum constraint basically means that, we are converting it into a cloth, and just make sure in this constraint type you choose this cloth. So I'll be making a like basic to advanced vellum series later on. So right now let's just do this because it's quite simple. Then I'll add a vellum solver and just bring them close so they'll just get connected. Okay, let's click on this, and I mean, let's just go to the first frame first of all. Okay, so we have this, and we here is an option for collision geometry. So I can plug in the collision over here. So we have this collision geometry. Okay, so yep, now let's do a simulation and let's see how it looks. All right, see. All right, so we have got something like this, and you can see as soon as this thing falls, it just gets converted into cloth, and that is like very basic behavior. So let's see why is that happening? Because let's say if I add a null over here, and if I drag out this constraint and if I click on this, you can see the constraints, they are like only forming on the surface, but there's like nothing inside the surface. So in order to have something, some volume to it, we need to add one more constraint. So let's just add one more Vellum constraints, and let's just put them over here. And these ones will be, just go over here in the constraint type, change them to Vellum, just struts. And now if I just plug them like this, and let's look at the constraints, and you can see now we have this dense constraints. So we even have constraints inside our object. So it's going to hold a volume and everything. And now let's just do a sim, and let's see how it looks. Also, I'll just go over here, and maybe in this visualize, I'll just turn off this show collision, so we'll be able to just see the simulation itself. Okay, let's see how it looks. All right, guys, so the simulation is done, and basically what I did, I just added a merge. So I'm merging the collision object with my Vellum output, and we have got something like this. And I think it looks really good. So like soft body simulations, like they are really fun, and especially with these kinds of geometry inside of Houdini that it ships with. So yep, okay, so that's looking all cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cache this simulation out so that I can use it seamlessly with by making just a file cache. Okay, so I'll just add a file cache over here and just connected this over here. So right now if you see, it has like lots of useless attributes which I don't really need. So I can just add an attribute delete. So this way my simulation is clean, and also it really saves up my disk space. Okay, so I'll just add a star sorry, asterisk over here, and this will just delete everything. Okay, so maybe if you want to do some additional simulation, maybe you can keep velocity or something. So what you can do is you can just press shift and 6 on your keyboard, so that will make this cap symbol, and you can type V. So it will keep I mean it will delete everything except velocity. So we will have velocity everywhere, but I don't really plan to do anything. And velocity is like one of the attribute which takes a lot of space. So instead, I'll just save it and just change the file path to the explicit, the old method, and click over here. Let's go to the desktop. I'll make a new folder, call this wetmap. Okay, go inside it and make a new folder, call it Vellum cache. Go inside it and let me just add a $F. That's it. And yep, so just I'll just click on this delete channels because I just want to save 100 frames. And yes, let me just click on save to this and let's see. All right, guys. So it has been saved to the disk, and now we don't really need all these stuff. So I can just disconnect all that stuff out. Okay, and I can just keep it aside because I already have my cache now. And if we look at it, we have something like this. All right. Okay, now let's get started with our main stuff. Okay, so what we want to do is, the way I like to work is, it's like little bit different because I want to keep things easier. So so instead of this cache, you can have your flip simulation, you can have your RBD simulation, you can have your particle simulation. It could be anything, and it will just work with all the things. So you can make wet maps with almost everything. So the first thing that I'd like to do is, I'll just go over here and I will add a color over here. So let's add this color node, put it over here, and I'll just make this black. Okay, and I will add a color node over here, and this one I'll make them red. Okay, all right, so this is red, this is black, and now I will add an attribute transfer. Okay, so in this attribute transfer, it says geometry to transfer attributes to. So where do I want to transfer the attributes? I want to transfer the attributes to my, because I want to make this wet. I mean, I want to make this box wet, and the water is like the wetness thing is this object. I mean the Vellum simulation. So attributes from here. Okay. So now let's just reorganize it something like this. Fine. All right, so now let's say if I click over here, you can see everything turns red because the distance threshold is like really high. So I can just reduce it to something like that. And now you will see we will have something like this. Okay, so let's say if I add a merge and if I see the original simulation with my attribute transfer, so we are having something like this, and you can see it's looking very coarse. That because the reason is we are like not having lots of details in our geometry. So I can just add a remesh. I mean just press tab and just add a remesh. So this is just temporarily. Okay, and we have this remesh over here. Let me put the target size to like 0.1 or maybe even 0.05. So it will just take few time just to load, store it in the RAM. And now if we look at it, let's see what do we get. And we are getting something like this, and that's sweet. Okay, so one thing is like like it's transferring everything just too far. So I can just go into this attribute transfer and I can like really decrease this value to maybe 0.05 or maybe even 0.02. And yes, I think that is fine. So we are having something like this. Okay, all right, so right now the main thing, because it is transferring the attributes, but because this is not a solver, I mean this is not simulation, so it clears everything on the next frame. So everything just gets cleared in the next frame, and that is an issue. So how we can fix that? So right now if you see, they will just transfer the attributes, but in the next frame it's just going to clear everything. So what we need to do is we need to add a solver here. So SOP solver, basically it means it just works as a memory kind of thing. It remembers what's happening in the previous frame, and it gathers the data and it stores the data. So I mean, lot of people, they have really hard time figuring it out, like how to use it. So just remember uh, just remember the connection. So it's coming something like this. So all that you need to do over here is just connect this one over here. So in the same way it's going into this attribute transfer. So this is the first input which is coming into from this box, and the second input is coming from this Vellum. So all that we need to do is just do the same thing over here, this one over here, and this one over here. Now let's do a Control X, go inside it. Let's do a Control V. So here it says previous frame. So that is like, where do we want to transfer the data? We want to transfer the data from current frame to the previous frame, so that it stores it gets stored it gets stored on the every frame. So you can just like, so it says geometry to transfer attributes to. Okay, so I want to transfer the attributes to the previous frame. Okay, which goes to my mesh, to my original object. Okay, and if we come inside it, so the second input, it says geometry to transfer attributes from. So from where do we want to transfer the attribute? So you'll be like very tempted to just connect it over here, and you might think that this will work, but it won't work. And the reason is because if you so the data is coming from here, and if you look at this input, it says the auxiliary input, and in the bracket it says 2, input 2, and input 2 is over here. So you need to connect it like this. Okay, and now it shall be working. And always make sure your attribute transfer is highlighted, and if we just go over here, we'll see we will have this working. Okay, and yep, that is working indeed. So you see how easy it is if you try to do everything by understanding the terms and everything. So let me just add a merge over here, and let me connect this solver, and let me just connect this, so we can see both of them at a time. Okay, so yep, we are getting something like this. Okay, and right now one thing is like like the edges, they are like looking kind of hard. You can see there we are like having some hard edges. So what I can do is I can just add an attribute blur. Okay, and if I just put it over here. Okay, so here it says position. I don't want to blur the position in the attributes. Instead, I will write CD. So it's going to blur out our color, and you can see on the edges, it will just soften it out. So you can even put it to 2, but that's a little bit too much in this. Oh, sorry, it went to 10. Sorry. So you can put it 1 or maybe 2. It depends upon you. I think 1 will just do the job. And now let's see if we look. So it's looking much more organic now. Okay. So now the time is, now we need to dampen it out. Like we need to make it dry, make it look dry. How we can make it look dry? Okay, so that's very easy. Just go inside the solver, and in this attribute transfer, so what's happening is right now it's transferring a value. So if we go into this geometry spreadsheet, you can see we are like transferring these values, and it's set to 1. So as we know, whatever is inside the SOP solver, it evaluates on every frame. Okay, so let's say if I add an attribute angle, and don't be like scared, because you're not going to do any coding or anything. So I'll write @cd is equal to, so that means I'm calling for color diffuse, and then I write @cd multiplied by, and let's write some number. So let's say if I write something like 5, and if I just do this, if I just put this, the symbol, and let's see what happens. So on every frame it will get multiplied by 5. Okay, and that is what's going to happen. So let's say we look on the SOP level. The color is going to get multiplied by 5 on every frame, and you see how dark it's getting. And the reason is because like it's getting multiplied by. So on every frame, if you see, so these values, they'll be getting multiplied by 5, and they'll just keep on increasing, because once again, solver knows what is happening on the previous frame, and on the current frame it just multiplies everything. So as we know from our maths class, if we multiplied something by a number which is less than 1, so let's say if I multiply it by 0.5, it's going to decrease. Or you can, at the same time, you can also divide it by something. Okay, so let's say if I do it now, what will happen? So you will see it will transfer the attribute, and you see it will start fading it out. So right now it's just way too quick. So what I'll do is I'll just maybe go inside here and maybe write something like 0.98. Okay, now let's see how it looks, and we will see, and you can see it will transfer the data, and after some time it will just fade out, and it will just dry. So that is something what we want, because that is how we will have so wherever this map is going to be there, it will blend between two materials, and after some time everything will turn to the original material, which is the dry material, and we will have this working wet maps. So if you want to increase it, maybe you can put it to 0.95 maybe, so you will have a quicker kind of drying effect. So we will have something like this. I think that is like really working. And what we can do is we can maybe, if you want, you can just blur it out even more. So maybe 2, and let's see how that looks. Okay, sorry, I was not even looking at it. So okay, yeah, maybe let's just put it to 1, and yeah, I think that looks very organic. and it looks really good. So we have already got the working wet map. Okay, now it's time to do the render part. Okay, and that's very easy. All right, so now it's time to render out everything. Okay, so we have this thing over here, and just make sure you don't start like you don't you know start rendering this part or this part, because here we are not having the wet maps, we are having the wet maps over here. So this is what needs to be rendered. So let's add a null over here. Okay, and we will call this maybe floor. Okay, and let's add a material over here. So we'll be able to assign the materials over here. So this is the material. Okay, and yep, so I will also connect one more null over here, and for this one I call it Vellum geo maybe. Okay, so yep, that is done. Now let's go ahead and let's see how we can render it out. Okay, all right, so I just added one camera over here. Okay, and let me just go to this material palette, drag and drop a principal shader. So this is like one basic shader, and let's just drag and drop this on the on our box. And I'll just go to this render view and I'll just start rendering it. So right now I'm not adding any lights or anything, because there's no point of adding lights or anything like that, because I just want to see if the shader is working. I'll also click on this preview button, so everything renders a little bit faster. And you can see we are just getting there's no effect of the shader on our object, because we have this use point color turned on. So make sure that is off. So now we will be able to see how the object is with our material. So let me just add this red color over here. Okay, and I'll just duplicate this one, and I'll add a green color over here. So I have a red and I have a green one. So if I put this one, now it's green. So now let me mix it. Okay, so I will add a layer mix. Okay, so we have layer A over here and layer B over here. Now let's say if I now you need to put this material over here, and if I do that, let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see we get a 50% of depth, because the alpha is set to 0.5. So if I put the alpha to 0, we will have everything as red, and if I put the alpha to 1, we will have everything to the green color. All right, so let's see how this layer mix works. So let's say if in this alpha I add maybe a turbulence noise. Okay, and if I plug it over here, you know and I just need to okay, so I'll just put this turbulence noise over here as of now, and maybe I will just add a UV planar project so that we can see how it's looking. So I'll just put it over here, and you can see we have this turbulence noise working over here. And let's say if I put it to simplex noise, I can increase the amplitude. Okay, so right now we are having this kind of map, and let's say if I put the layer mix over here, this map will be able to blend between our red and our green material. So that is the analogy of what we are going to do. Okay, so the thing is, now let me just delete it, and we want to use that wet map that we have created to use this as our blending map between both of them. So if we look at it, basically it's just stored in our CD, in our color data. Okay, so if I just come over here, I can add a bind. So if you just put a bind over here, so this bind can import data from your SOP level to your material network. Okay, and if you just write CD over here, you can just, sorry, not like that, CD. Okay, and now you can just connect it over here. So basically wherever, so it's not like it's going to bring all the CD data. So it depends upon wherever you are applying this material on. So there might be like 50 different CD data, but this is applied, this texture is coming, this material is coming from this object itself. So it will only refer to that object, and right now it won't work. All that you need to do is go into this type and change it from one float to this 3 floats vector. Okay, because the data is stored in our red channel. Okay, and you can see now it's working, and yep, that is looking cool. All right, so this thing is working. So now I can call this dry material. Okay, I'll call this dry. Okay, and let me just put this one over here, and now let's make a dry material. Okay, so before doing that, I'll just go back to my object level, and I'm going to add an environment light I'm going to add an HDRI so that everything looks more beautiful and natural. So I just got this HDRI free from the Polyhaven. You can just go there and just download a free HDRI. And let's see how it's looking. Yep. So we are getting some lights and shadows, and yeah, this thing is working. Let's go back into my dry material, and I'll give it a color of something like a kind of beach color. What we have, that sand kind of thing. Okay. Yep. And all right. So that is fine. So I really want to make it rough because I want to show it like this is a kind of dry material. So in this roughness, I'll just increase the roughness to maybe something like 0.6, and in this reflection I will really decrease it to like 0.3 because it's very rough and dry. So it won't have that much of, I mean, don't just reduce too much of it, otherwise it will start looking very unnatural. It's just that the dry beach is not that reflective. Okay. All right, so we have this dry material already made up. Now I'll just delete this material and I'll just make a duplicate of this one and I'll call it wet. So yep, let me just put it over here, and now I'm going to make it wet. Okay, so how we can do that? So just increase this reflectivity. Okay, and in this roughness you can just almost zero it out. And okay, so that is it. Now let me just connect this layer to this B and just put this layer mix over here, and let's wait for the moment we have been waiting for. And yes, we can see something is happening, but it's not really that evident. So what you can do is you can just click on this one. I mean, I'll just go to this wet material, and we know like whenever something gets wet, it gets a lot darker. So I can just darken out this material. Okay, and also maybe I can kind of desaturate it a little bit, and maybe I can darken it out even more. So if you put some water on the beach, you will see, it will start darkening out. It will absorb the liquid, and it gets a kind of a darker tint to it. And you can see that is what we are doing over here. So if you want, like maybe this is too much, so we can anytime go ahead and maybe reduce it a little bit. Yeah, and yep, that is working. Okay, and at the same time, if you feel like this is drying out too quick, you can just go back here and maybe in this, you can put it something like 0.9, 8. So the more this value is, the slowly it's going to dry. Okay, and we have this. Okay, all right, so let's go back and let's see how it's looking. Okay, so now I'm just gonna add everything. So basically let's go to this one, and I'll just copy this layer mix. I'll do a control C. Okay, and I'll just come back to my scene view. So right now this material is being applied on a complete level over here. So if you come over here, you can see it's being applied over here. So just remove it. Okay, and I'm just going to put it over here. Otherwise what happens is like when you drag and drop a material onto your geometry, it gets applied everywhere. So whatever is there inside this folder, all of them will inherit the same material. But if you use these nodes, you can put your own material over here. So now I'll just duplicate this material and put it over here, and I'll remove it. And let's just add a merge so we can see both of the Vellum geometry and our wet maps as well. So if I click on this, okay, so we can see both of them. All right, so let's just go here and in the render view, let's see how it's looking. Okay, so I'll just make a new principal shader in order to add a shader to our geometries also. So let's add a principal shader, and I'll call it Vellum Geos. Okay, and let's do a control C. Let's go back into this object view, come over here in this material and just paste it over here. Fine. So yep, we'll get something like this. And you can see, always make sure like whenever you want to make a wet object, never have the color set to the one value, otherwise it will never look real. Because whenever you have something which is wet, it will always become kind of off white, and it will look just more realistic. So I'll just try to make it kind of off white and grayish. Okay, and also in this roughness I'll really decrease it because they are wet, so they are not rough. Okay, all right, so let's just have full render and let's see how it's looking. All right, so yep, I think it's looking really good. So you can see, we made the shader, this wet and the dry shader, and it's working. Okay, so yep, that is it. And now, let's just go out and render it out. So let's see how we can render it out. So we have the start and the end frame, and we have this, let's just go over here, and here it's set to render frame range. Let's go to this rendering. Okay, you can change this one to maybe physical based rendering PBR, so it looks a little bit better, and maybe it might be a little bit faster, but I don't really see any difference. Okay, so now let's just save it out to the disk. So in this output picture you can click this one, and let's just go to my desktop, and just go to this folder, and I'll call it render. Let's go inside it, and here I will add a dollar $F. Just make sure to write .exr or .jpeg or whatever you want to save in. I like to save it in EXR format so that I have lots of control later on. And that's it. Now just click on render to disk, and it will just save out all your frames to the disk. Okay, so that is it for this tutorial. I hope you liked it, and if you liked it, just make sure you subscribe, and also visit out our channel. You can find lots of flip, pyro, and all those tutorials. So there are also a lot more new tutorial series which are coming up. Also, you can join our school, and you can learn animation, effects, and simulation, and all that cool stuff. You can also have a 7 days demo, a free demo, I shall say. Okay, so that is it. Let's meet in the next tutorial. Bye bye.